The gentle patter of rain tapped against the window, casting soft ripples on the glass as Maya sat in her dimly lit apartment. The glow of her phone screen illuminated her face, which carried the weight of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. She scrolled through old text messages, her thumb hovering over a conversation she had read more times than she cared to admit. Her eyes fixated on one message. "I love you. Forever." She whispered the words to herself, as if speaking them aloud could conjure his presence. Her fingers trembled over the call button, but, like every other night, she couldn't bring herself to press it. With a sigh, she set the phone down and leaned back, her gaze drifting toward the ceiling. Her mind wandered back to memories she couldn't escape. She remembered how they used to laugh over the smallest things, like the way he would steal fries off her plate when he thought she wasn't looking, or the playful banter they shared during late-night walks under the stars. But those moments felt like a dream now, replaced by the emptiness his absence had carved into her life. The warmth of his hand intertwined with hers, the soft way he used to say her name. All of it was gone without explanation. Just a cold goodbye that never made sense. The smell of fresh coffee wafted through the small cafe as Maya stirred her cup absent-mindedly. Across the table, her best friend Sana watched her with a mix of concern and frustration. "Maya, it's been 6 months," Sana said gently, but her words hit like a splash of cold water. "You can't keep torturing yourself like this." "I know," Maya whispered, looking down at the swirling cream in her coffee. "But I can't help it. It's like I can't move forward because I don't have answers. I keep thinking, what if he still loves me? What if there's something I'm not seeing?" Sana sighed and leaned in closer. "Maybe you don't need to figure it out alone. There's this tarot reader downtown. Everyone says she's really good. Maybe she can give you some clarity." Maya let out a small nervous laugh. "Tarot readings? Really? I'm desperate, but I'm not that desperate." But later that night, as the rain continued its steady rhythm outside her window, and her heart ached for closure, desperation took hold of her. The next morning, she found herself standing outside a small, tucked-away shop with flickering neon lights that spelled "Tarot Readings. Seek your truth." The smell of incense wafted through the door as she stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim glow of candles lining the walls. It felt like stepping into another world, a world where answers could be found if you were brave enough to seek them. A woman sat behind a small wooden table draped in deep purple cloth. Her presence was calm, but her eyes held a depth that made Maya feel as if she were being seen for the first time. "Sit," the woman said softly, gesturing to the chair across from her. "You've come for answers." Maya hesitated before sitting down, her fingers nervously gripping the edges of the chair. "I want to know if he still loves me," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "We were together for 2 years. He left, and I don't know why. I just need to know if it's over." The woman shuffled the tarot cards slowly, methodically, as if each movement held its own magic. "Be careful," she said, her eyes meeting Maya's. "Sometimes love doesn't give us the answers we want. Are you sure you're ready for the truth?" Maya swallowed hard and nodded. The woman placed the deck in front of her. "Shuffle these and think about him. Focus on your question." Maya's hands trembled as she shuffled the cards, memories flooding her mind. His laugh, his warmth, the way he used to pull her close when she felt the world was too much. She handed the deck back, her breath hitching as the woman laid down the first card. The image of 2 figures entwined beneath an arch caught her eye. "The lovers," the woman said, her voice steady. "This card represents your past with him. There was love, real love. But it wasn't as perfect as you remember, was it?" Maya felt her chest tighten. "No," she admitted. "We had our issues. He was always distant sometimes, like his mind was somewhere else." The woman nodded, flipping the second card. the soft glow of the candles reflected off the image of a moon, casting eerie shadows across the table. "The moon," she murmured. "Secrets, confusion, and hidden truths. Something was kept from you, something that clouded your relationship." Maya's breath hitched. Her mind raced back to the night Rohan had left. She had begged him to explain, but all he had said was, "This is for the best." The words had haunted her ever since. "What kind of secret?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman didn't answer directly. "The cards reveal possibilities, not certainties. But this secret was big enough to break what you had. It's not what you think." Maya clenched her fists, frustration boiling inside her. "Then why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he give me a chance to understand?" The woman placed a comforting hand on hers. "Because sometimes people believe they're protecting you by walking away." Her heart pounded as the woman revealed the third card. 3 swords pierced through a heart, the red dripping like fresh wounds. "The 3 of Swords," she whispered. "This card represents your present pain and his regret." Maya's breath hitched. "He regrets it?" Her voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "If he regrets it, why hasn't he come back?" The woman stared at her for a moment before speaking. "Because he's trapped in his own guilt. And until you uncover the truth of why he left, neither of you will be free." Maya wiped her tears, her mind spinning. The tarot reading wasn't just giving her answers. It was unraveling everything she thought she knew about their breakup. There was more to the story, something hidden in the shadows of their past, and she couldn't let it go until she uncovered the truth. As she left the shop, the rain had stopped, but the storm inside her had only just begun. She clutched the locket around her neck, the one he had given her on their anniversary, and felt the weight of its significance. If there was a secret buried between them, she was determined to find it, no matter how much it hurt. Back in her apartment, Maya sat on the floor, the locket in her trembling hands. She ran her fingers over its delicate surface, tracing the initials engraved on the back. M+R. Her thoughts spiraled as she remembered the day he had given it to her. It had been their 1-year anniversary. Rohan had taken her to a quiet spot by the river, away from the noise of the city, where they had talked about their future. Dreams of travelling, getting married, maybe even living by the sea. It had felt so real then, like nothing could tear them apart. But something had. And now the locket weighed on her like an anchor, pulling her deeper into the memory she couldn't escape. She opened it, revealing the small picture of them smiling, their faces pressed close together. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Why didn't you fight for us, Rohan?" Her thumb brushed over the edge of the locket, and that's when she felt it. Something odd, something she hadn't noticed before. There was a tiny ridge, almost like a seam. Her breath hitched as she pressed her nail against it. With a soft click, a hidden compartment popped open, revealing a folded piece of paper tucked inside. Heart pounding, she unfolded it, her eyes scanning the rushed handwriting she knew so well. "I love you, Maya. I always will. But I can't drag you into this. Please, no, it's not because I stopped loving you. It's because I love you too much." The words blurred as tears streamed down her face. Her hand shook as she clutched the note to her chest, trying to process the meaning behind it. "What did you mean, Rohan?" "Drag me into what?" She reread the note over and over, but it gave her no answers, only more questions that burned in her mind. She needed to know the truth, and she knew exactly where to start. The next morning, Maya returned to the tarot reader's shop, the note folded neatly in her pocket like a ticking time bomb. The scent of incense greeted her once again, and the soft flicker of candlelight made her feel like she had stepped into a dream. The woman was waiting, as if she had known Maya would come back. "You found something, didn't you?" the woman said, her eyes scanning Maya's face. Maya nodded and pulled out the note, placing it on the table. "He left this for me. It was hidden in the locket he gave me. But I don't understand what he meant. He said he loved me, but he couldn't stay. Why?" The woman didn't seem surprised. She shuffled the deck of cards again, slower this time, as if sensing that this reading would be different. The truth is often layered. What you see on the surface is only part of the story. Let's see what the cards reveal. Maya's breath was shallow as the woman laid down the fourth card. The image was of a figure standing before a set of scales, a trumpet blaring above them. The word at the bottom read, "Judgment." "This is the card of decisions and consequences," the woman said. "The truth is waiting, but it's tied to a choice you must make. Are you prepared to face it?" Maya nodded, her fingers digging into her lap. "Yes, I need to know." The woman's gaze softened, and for the first time she leaned closer, as if the weight of the reading had shifted. "He left you because he believed it was the only way to protect you. But there's more to it than just his love for you. He was protecting you from something painful, something he didn't think you could handle." Maya's heart raced as the woman continued. "There's someone or something that forced him to leave. But this is the part you don't know. It wasn't entirely his choice. He left because he believed it was necessary, but there was pressure, guilt, a burden he thought would ruin you both if he stayed." The words hit her like a wave, crashing down with enough force to leave her breathless. She clutched the table, her mind spinning with possibilities. What kind of burden? The woman hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the judgment card. "I can't say for sure, but this card tells me you already have the key to finding out. You just have to be brave enough to confront it." Maya's thoughts raced back to Rohan's family, the tense dinners where his father had barely acknowledged her presence, and his mother had looked at her like she wasn't good enough. Was it them? Had they been the ones to force him to leave? Or was there something else, something darker that she hadn't seen? Her mind wouldn't rest until she knew. She thanked the woman and left the shop, the note burning a hole in her pocket as she made her way back to her apartment. She sat on the couch, her hands shaking as she pulled out her phone. Her finger hovered over Rohan's number, but she couldn't bring herself to call him. Instead, she scrolled through her saved photos, stopping at one taken at his parents' house during a family gathering. Everyone had been smiling, but now, looking closer, she noticed how tense Rohan's expression had been. His arm had been around her, but his eyes had been distant, like he was already fighting a battle she didn't know about. Her breath hitched as she remembered something, a conversation they had had that night, one she had brushed off at the time. He had been unusually quiet, and when she had asked him what was wrong, he had said, "If something ever happens, promise me you'll take care of yourself." At the time, she had laughed it off, thinking he was just being dramatic. But now, the memory felt like a clue, a breadcrumb leading her to the truth. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had driven him away was bigger than she had realized, and it wasn't over. Determined, she picked up the phone and dialed his number. Her heart pounded with each ring, her breath catching when it went to voicemail. "Rohan," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I found the note. I need to see you. Please." She ended the call and sat there staring at the screen, waiting for a response. But none came. As the hours passed and the silence grew heavier, her determination only deepened. If he wouldn't come to her, she would go to him. She grabbed her coat, the note still clutched in her hand, and stepped outside into the cold night. The air was crisp, and her breath fogged in front of her as she walked with purpose. Whatever secret Rohan had been keeping, She was ready to uncover it. The cold night air nipped at her cheeks as Maya walked briskly through the quiet streets, her breath coming out in foggy puffs. Her footsteps echoed on the pavement, but her thoughts drowned out the sound. Her mind replayed every detail she could remember. The way Rohan's eyes had darkened before he left, the cryptic note hidden in the locket, the tarot reader's haunting words. He believed leaving you was the only way to protect you. Her fingers tightened around her phone as she neared his apartment building, an old structure with worn brick walls that looked eerily familiar. She had spent countless evenings here, curled up on the couch in his arms, imagining a future that now seemed like a distant dream. Standing outside his door, she hesitated. Her hand hovered over the buzzer, heart pounding. What if he didn't answer? What if the truth was worse than she could handle? But she had come too far to turn back. She pressed the buzzer. Silence stretched on, and just when she thought he wouldn't answer, a crackling voice came through the intercom. "Who is it?" "It's me, Rohan. Please, I need to talk to you." Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to stay steady. There was a long pause, then the sound of the door unlocking. She pushed it open, her footsteps echoing as she climbed the stairs. The familiar creak of the third step sent a chill down her spine, as if the building itself remembered her. When she reached his door, it was already open. She stepped inside cautiously, closing it behind her. The apartment looked the same, dim lighting, the scent of his cologne lingering in the air, and the faint hum of music coming from a speaker in the corner. But something felt different. The warmth she had once felt in this space was gone, replaced by a heaviness she couldn't explain. Rohan stood by the window, his silhouette outlined by the glow of the city lights. He didn't turn around. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He exhaled and ran a hand through his hair before facing her. His eyes were tired, as if he hadn't slept in days. "I didn't think you'd find the note." Maya stepped closer, her heart racing. "I wasn't supposed to, was I? You hid it because you didn't want me to know the truth." Rohan sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I thought it would be easier if you hated me. If you thought I just walked away without a reason." Her breath hitched. "But I didn't hate you, Rohan. I couldn't. I spent 6 months torturing myself, trying to understand why you left. And then I found the note. And now I need answers. What were you protecting me from?" He turned back toward the window, his gaze fixed on the city below. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer, but then he spoke, his voice low and filled with pain. "My family, my father's debts, the people he owed money to. They weren't the kind of people you could reason with. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you caught in the middle of it." Maya felt like the floor had shifted beneath her. "Debts? Rohan, you could have told me. We could have figured it out together." He shook his head, his jaw tightening. "No, you don't understand. They weren't just after money. They wanted control, leverage. And when they found out about you, about how much I loved you, they threatened to hurt you if I didn't cooperate. I had to leave, Maya. It was the only way to keep you safe." Tears streamed down her face as the weight of his words settled in her chest. "You let me believe I wasn't enough, that you didn't want me anymore." "I know," he whispered, his voice breaking, "and it killed me every day. But what was I supposed to do? If anything had happened to you because of me, I would never forgive myself." Maya wiped her tears, stepping closer until she was right in front of him. "You should have given me the chance to fight with you, Rohan. You didn't have to carry this alone." He looked down at her, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I couldn't risk it. I loved you too much to let them use you against me." The room fell silent. the weight of their shared pain filling the space between them. Maya reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "I still love you," she whispered, "but what you did, it broke me." "I know," he said, his voice cracking, "and I don't know how to fix it." She pulled away, pacing the room as her emotions swirled inside her like a storm. "Is it over? Are they still a threat?" Rohan hesitated before answering. "It's not as bad as it was, but they're still out there. I've been working to pay off the debts, but it's not easy." Maya turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. "Then let me help you. I'm not leaving you this time. We'll figure it out together." His expression softened, but fear lingered in his eyes. "Maya, I don't want you to get hurt. And I don't want to spend another day without you," she said firmly. "I don't care what we have to face. I just need to know that you'll let me be there for you." The tension in the room dissolved as Rohan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if she were the only thing keeping him grounded. They stood there for what felt like an eternity, wrapped in each other's warmth, the pain of the past slowly giving way to hope. But deep down, a lingering sense of unease remained. The debts weren't fully paid, and the people behind them weren't the type to forget. As much as Maya wanted to believe love was enough, a part of her knew that their fight wasn't over. For now, though, she chose to hold on to this moment. The rest could wait until tomorrow. The early morning light filtered through the window, casting a golden hue over the room as Maya stirred in Rohan's arms. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of calm, as if the pieces of her shattered heart had begun to stitch themselves back together. But reality wasn't far behind. As the sunlight warmed her skin, so did the weight of their unresolved problems settle on her mind. The world outside hadn't changed just because they found their way back to each other. The threats were still there, lingering like shadows that refused to fade. She turned her head slightly, watching Rohan as he slept beside her, his brow furrowed even in rest. He looked peaceful, yet burdened, as if his mind never truly allowed him to escape the chaos that had driven them apart. She gently brushed her fingers across his cheek, and he stirred awake, his eyes fluttering open. For a brief moment, he smiled at her, but it quickly faded. "We have to talk," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. He sighed, sitting up and running a hand through his hair. "I know." She pulled the note from the nightstand, the creased paper a painful reminder of the secret he had tried to bury. "You can't leave me in the dark again, Rohan. We're in this together now, but I need to know everything." He looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of the sheet as if it held the answers to all their problems. "There's someone you need to meet," he said finally. "Someone who can help you understand just how deep this goes." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" "My uncle, Dev. He knows everything. He's been helping me behind the scenes, but he wanted me to keep you out of it. I'm done hiding things from you, though. I'll take you to see him." The tension in her chest tightened, but she nodded. "Okay." The drive to Dev's secluded house on the outskirts of the city was quiet, the weight of unspoken fears filling the car. Maya stared out the window, watching the city slowly give way to winding roads and tall trees. Her fingers tapped against her lap, a nervous habit she couldn't control. Rohan occasionally glanced at her, as if sensing her unease, but he said nothing. When they arrived, the house looked ordinary, an old brick structure with ivy crawling up the walls, but Maya knew better than to trust appearances. They knocked, and within seconds, the door creaked open. A man in his early 40s stood before them, his eyes sharp and calculating. He had the same intensity as Rohan, but his features were rougher, hardened by experience. "Dev," Rohan said with a nod, "this is Maya." Dev's gaze softened slightly as he looked at her, but there was a guardedness in his expression. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let them in. The inside of the house was cluttered with papers, maps, and ledgers spread across the dining table. Maya's eyes darted around the room, taking in the chaos that hinted at how complicated their situation really was. Dev motioned for them to sit, and as they did, he poured them both a cup of tea. "I know you're here because you want answers," Dev said, leaning forward, "and I won't sugarcoat anything. Rohan's father made some dangerous enemies, and they didn't just want money. They wanted control over everything he had, including his family. When Rohan stepped in to help, they saw an opportunity. They used his connection to you as leverage." Maya swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the cup. "What exactly did they threaten?" "Everything," Dev replied grimly. "They wanted him to leave you. They knew if he stayed with you, it would be easier to manipulate him. So when he left, it wasn't just to protect you. It was to prevent them from using you as a pawn in their game." Her heart ached, but anger bubbled beneath the surface. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Dev chuckled darkly. "You don't go to the police with people like this. They have connections, ways of making things disappear before anyone notices. We've been working to pay off the debts and cut ties, but it's slow, too slow." Maya looked at Rohan, her voice shaking. "So what now? Do we just keep living in fear, waiting for them to come back?" Rohan reached for her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Number, I'm not running anymore. I'm done hiding. Dev and I have been gathering information on them, enough to negotiate, to make sure they back off for good. But it's risky," Dev added, leaning back in his chair. "We have leverage, but they're unpredictable. One wrong move, and they could retaliate." Maya felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "Then what can I do?" Dev studied her for a moment before answering. "Stay by his side. Be strong. They prey on weakness, on fear. If they see that you're not someone they can use, it'll take away their power." Her determination hardened. She wasn't going to be a victim or a pawn. She had lost too much already, and she wasn't going to let them take any more from her. "I can do that." Dev nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "Good. We'll move forward carefully. But you need to be ready for anything." Maya tightened her grip on Rohan's hand, silently promising herself that no matter what came next, she wouldn't let their love be torn apart again.